Moyosore Onigbanjo joins us to have this conversation. He's Attorney General Commissioner for Justice in Lagos State, of course, to respond to a whole load of backlash on the Lagos vehicle auction controversy. Thanks for joining us this morning. Well, first of all, let's begin by asking you, how is the government reacting to this backlash? It's not the first time this auction is happening.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Well, as a society, I think the first thing is we need to make up our minds. Do we want to live in a city or a state in which there is law and order? Or do we want to live in a city akin to a jungle? If we choose the option to live in a city where there is law and order, and I think it is imperative on everybody that we comply with the laws of the land. The opposite of this would be anarchy, bedlam, and a place in which perhaps only the strongest will survive. So this law, the Lagos State Transport Sector Reform Law, was passed in 2018. And of course, it prescribes a lot of penalties for traffic offenses. The one in issue particularly that raises this concern is the forfeiture of vehicles that drive against traffic, which is popularly known as one-way in local parlance. I think the major, I'm not a legislator, and I wasn't in the State House of Assembly when that law was passed. But it's easy to guess that the essence of the law essentially is deterrence, to deter people from driving against traffic for reasons which are obvious. Some people say that the punishment is not appropriate, but it depends on what perspective you're looking at it. So take, for example, the family of one Mr. Olajide Ayeni, a 59-year-old man, who was knocked down on Marina in Lagos at a zebra crossing in June of 2020 by a military man riding a motorcycle against traffic. This man lost his life. He is the breadwinner of his family. What do you think his family would feel about impounding the vehicle that was used to kill their benefactor? Government doesn't set out to punish its citizens, but there must be law and order. And whilst we like to complain when these laws are enforced, the minute most Nigerians travel abroad, they comply with every law. So the law is there, it's for the benefit of us all, it's for our sanity, is to enable us to be able to conduct our affairs in a predictable manner.
A quick one, Mr. Onigbanjo. Just one quick one on this particular issue of the law that provides for impounding a vehicle that drives against traffic. It's interesting that it seems this law on impounding a vehicle that drives against traffic is only for cars or motorized vehicles and not motorcycles. The law says, for instance, for riding a motorcycle against traffic, it's a fine of 20,000, or the second offender 30,000 naira, and an additional, sentencing of 3 months or 6 months in prison.
No, I'm not sure. The law, I think Section 66 of the law prescribes that. Section 66 of the law prescribes that anyone who drives against traffic or doesn't follow traffic signals, neglects or refuses to stop the vehicle or to make to proceed, or drives against incoming traffic. So it's in if you, I'm sure you're just looking at the schedule of the law. If you look at section 66 of the law, the language is embracing enough to capture even motorcycles.
Interesting that when we talk about cars, we talk about driving, but when they talk about motorcycles, we talk about riding. Is that significant?
Well, you know, the law says penalties for neglect of traffic directions.
Okay. Well, let's speak to some other things. There are those who have complained significantly, and I'm sure, as I said, there's been a huge backlash. There's those who have complained that, look, it's too much to impound a vehicle simply because the fellow drove against traffic. Granted, you know, the issue that you raised, those who are affected, the victims of, you know, driving against, you know, it can be significant. But then there are those who look at some of the economic considerations on those who, for instance, the young man who, you know, was all over the social media and been crying that, look, he got a loan to buy this vehicle and all of that, and now he's gone to the 3-month statutory, you know, imprisonment on account of that offense, and he's only come out to learn that the vehicle that he's still paying the loan back on is auctioned right before his eyes. Is there a place for humanness in government?
Of course there is. If you look at the number of times auctions have been conducted since this administration came to power, I think this is the second one. If you correlate that with the number of times you and I, whilst driving, see people driving against traffic, then you see the humaneness on government side. The other issue which you raised is that about the appropriateness of the penalty. My advice really would be like, do not put your means of livelihood in jeopardy by breaching the law. And then when you then breach the law, then you then maybe try to whip up sentiments. If you see the Lady of Justice, it is blindfolded. It doesn't look at emotions. Law does not look at emotions. Why?
May I come in there?
Let me finish. Why will you risk your means of livelihood if you know this is the only thing I have to feed to sustain yourself economically? Why risk it by breaching the law?
All right. We understand that before those traffic offenders got to the level where they forfeited their vehicle, that so many other processes had gone into that aspect before, you know, they forfeited the vehicle. I'd like you to please educate Lagosians. Perhaps there are some people out there who do not know some of these things. What are those processes that led to them forfeiting their vehicles?
Thank you very much. So the first thing is that in the instance of this young man that you're talking about, he was charged to court and faced a 4-count charge, which included assaulting the police officers and injuring the police officers who tried to apprehend him when he was driving against traffic. He was represented by a lawyer in court, one Mr. Omotunde, and when he was confronted with the allegations, when the charges were read to him, he pleaded guilty. And the court accordingly sentenced him both for driving against traffic and also for the assault on the policemen. So before a car is forfeited, it's not just that law enforcement agencies would apprehend you on the road for breaching, driving against traffic, for instance, and then your car is automatically forfeited. No, you are firstly charged to the magistrate court, where you have the right to take a lawyer, where you have the right to explain the circumstances that led to your arrest, the magistrate or the judge will listen to your defense, and if they are satisfied that indeed you have made out a case that disproves the case of the state against you, then you will be let go. So it's not like as if it is automatic forfeiture. All the cars that were auctioned some were abandoned, and notices were even given in an advert in the Punch newspapers that if your car has been abandoned in the yard, you can still come and pick it up before the auction day. In respect of the forfeited cars, they were forfeited pursuant to orders of a court of law.
It would seem like if there is towering evidence against a traffic offender, even if they were charged to court, that they would still be found guilty. So as a follow-up to my colleague's question, where is the place of humaneness? Because some of the backlash stemmed from the view widely expressed that the punishment is way over and above the offense that has been committed. Is there a place for a review of this law such that offenders should not forfeit their means of livelihood, but should, as a matter of necessity, still be punished for driving against traffic or for flouting the peculiar traffic offense?
So yes, of course, there is means of review. The Lagos State Transport Sector Reform Law is currently being reviewed by the State House of Assembly, and amendments will be in place as soon as possible. The other thing is also that, government has to balance both sides, So on the one hand, people complain that the punishment or the penalty is not appropriate or is disproportionate. On the other hand, you have the menace and the danger caused by people who drive against traffic. So government has a balancing act, and in balancing it has noted that this issue of driving against traffic has become such a nuisance, such a danger, and such a menace to society that something drastic has to be done. And the legislators at that time imposed this penalty. There's a process to amend the law. So people can go up to their representatives in the State House of Assembly and make agitations that, look, in our view, we think this is draconian and you should change the law. That will kickstart the process. But ongoing right now, like I said, there's a process to review that law. But as far as the law remains as of today, people should be well advised not to jeopardize their own interest, because there's no use when you flout the law. It's driving against traffic is such an obvious breach of the law.
Absolutely. And that can't be said enough, Commissioner for Justice. Speaking of balancing acts, I'd like to draw your attention to some aspects of the law. Section 31 here says driving trailers, tankers, and tippers with non-functional lamps, and the fine for that is 25,000 naira, and the additional requirement is to effect repair. There's another one very quickly: driving a trailer or other vehicle carrying containers unlatched and not properly secure. The fine here is 250,000 naira. Commissioner, daily drivers of articulated vehicles are flouting this traffic law. Driving against traffic is ongoing now as we speak on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. So is it a problem of capacity or the right of jurisdiction over a particular highway that prevents the implementation of this law, such that while those who are flouting traffic offenses and driving cars, are facing the music, those who are driving articulated vehicles too should also be facing the music?
So it's a combination of all that you've said. And it's not, so I know my office is currently prosecuting a number of drivers of containers that had fallen down and killed people. We're prosecuting them for murder at the State High Court. So it's also an issue of the enforcement is out of the hands of the state government. Enforcement is by our security agencies, namely the Nigerian police. And, so they are to apprehend all those people on the roads and bring them up for prosecution. Once they do that, we will prosecute to the letter of the law. And, it goes to a lot of issues, the need for constitutional reform, the need for state police, so that states can really champion these things more if they have the powers of enforcement. But we have to rely on the Nigerian police force. As you all know, they're thinly stretched, across the state. They cannot be in every nook and cranny where a crime is being committed, where traffic rules are being violated. But when they do bring these people forward, then we, as in the Ministry of Justice, we prosecute them, be you articulated vehicle or be you a motorcycle or whoever you are that you breach the law, we prosecute.
So, Mr. Onigbanjo, what do you say to those who have consistently said that many of those areas that they happen to fall victim of, there were no indication or signs whatsoever that they were driving against traffic? Because some of them say, look, we don't know our way around Lagos, we're new in town, and so when we don't see any of those signs, all of a sudden they just jump and arrest us.
So the thing is, I get so many calls from people who say, oh, LASMA has arrested me, the police has arrested me, they lured me to take this way, or there are no road signs. My advice to them is that, okay, go to court and explain to the magistrate. And I know of one or two cases in which this has been contested. There was somebody who was arrested. He went to court and said that on that road, there is no sign saying that it's a one-way street. And he took pictures of the road and he showed it to the magistrate and he was free. But people always like quick fixes. People don't want to, sometimes they think it's bothersome to go to court and all that. So they would rather prefer a quick fix and try to settle the problems themselves. But, people should have confidence in the courts. Go to court, state your case. And I'm sure if it's clear that you didn't break the law, the magistrates will set you free.
Even though I've been to that court and I know that there are a couple of things that need to be done differently in that area. I just went there to actually see what was going on. But in addition to this now, if I have the car and then say my driver was driving and he flouts a law and he's arrested, can he or can that vehicle be forfeited since he's not the owner of the vehicle?
Well, as the law stands, the vehicle will be forfeited and your driver also stands the risk of being imprisoned under the current law. These are issues which have been flagged up, which the current review exercise going on will address.
And then what about on federal roads? I hear some lawyers talk about that, that they're not sure that if state laws will apply on federal roads. What's the position of the law on that?
State laws apply on federal roads because the states can regulate traffic within their boundaries. So the only instance, and we've had an instance like that, somebody was arrested, I think, in the region of the border between Lagos and Ogun State. He was charged to court, and he went to court and says, look, where you guys arrested me is actually Ogun State, and so you have no powers. And the magistrate agreed with him, and he was free. Oh. So within the boundaries of the state has legislative powers to make laws on traffic regulations.
So if an offender has been found guilty and sentenced, should he still forfeit the vehicle?
Well, so the magistrate has a discretion to forfeit the vehicle or to send the prison to, and to send the person to jail, depending on the circumstances. But mostly the penalty that magistrates impose if you drive against traffic is the forfeiture one.
Well, we're running out of time now, Honorable Commissioner. So, but let me take this message from one quick reaction that has come in. This is from Chima. He says, we should ask you if the law is meant for the transporters alone or motorists that include government officials, royalties, and motorbikes, and dare I add security personnel like police and the rest of them. Because some of them do go against traffic, no emergency whatsoever, and they go scot-free.
So, my brother, that's the conundrum of the kind of federalism that we're running. So, yes, there are definitely some government officials, some security agencies who flout these rules. But then again, if the state government does not have the powers of enforcement, how do I, for example, without any powers, and arrest a policeman who is driving against traffic? We see them, everybody sees them all the time, but the state is handicapped in doing anything. So we do a lot of reporting to the security agencies. So when, for example, people send us videos of security agencies or even of government officials driving against traffic or breaching traffic laws, if it's a Lagos State government official, we're going to take action. If it's an official of an agency over which the state has no control or powers, then we report to the authorities of that agency. So, for example, you will know that if a military officer commits an offense, it's punishment, or it can only face the law via a court-martial. So in those instances, we contact the authorities and inform them of what their officer or what their officer has done, and we expect them to do the needful. So we do flag those issues. During security meetings, all these issues are brought up, and we lay them at the table of all the security agencies, that people are telling us that, your men, some of your men, violate all these laws, and you need to rein them in, you need to call them to order. But if we don't have the powers to enforce, that's as much as the state government can do in those circumstances. But be rest assured that if it's any Lagos State government official, that person will be dealt with in accordance with the law.
Still so many questions to ask you, Commissioner, but we are completely out of time. But perhaps just this one question. In the event that you talked about people sending you videos, how do people do that if they want to report anything?
Well, so we have, for example, the Ministry of Justice, we have the website, the Ministry of Information. Our numbers of all commissioners are available online. My email is available online. You can simply write us a letter, send us an email. Sometimes people just simply even just post these things online, and we see them and we flag them and we ask questions from our agencies. What happened in this instance? Go to the police, ask for the file, and then we take it from there. So there are various channels of communication through which people can reach us.
We have to thank you very much this morning for being a part of our conversation. Moyosore Onigbanjo is Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Lagos State. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you very much, sir.